Kosak. I work with the Farm Alliance of Baltimore City. We've also got Tyler Brown from Real Food Farm here. And Future Harvest Casa is also a big part of putting these on. This is the third in a series. If you've missed the previous ones, the recordings and handouts and everything are on the Farm Alliance website, farmalliancebaltimore.org. And this also will be recorded, so please encourage people to check it out if they couldn't be here tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. If you go out this door and down the hallway to the left, restrooms are on the right at the end of the hall. We will be having burritos at the halfway point, donated by Chipotle. We also want to thank United Way of Central Maryland, the ABLE Foundation, as well as a number of other folks for supporting this effort. And am I missing any basic things? There's literature here from previous workshops as well as from today, so feel free to grab that. And please make sure to fill out the evaluations. We want to make them this series as strong as we can in the future. Also, of course, thanks to Civic Works, the parent organization to Real Food Farm, the folks who own this or take care of this wonderful building and allow us to be here for this. So the first half of tonight's presentation is about spin farming, small plot intensive, and Andy Pressman will be able to tell you a whole lot more about that than I can. He's shared some of this information at a previous Future Harvest conference, and a lot of us found it useful. So anyway, I hope you enjoy, and over dinner we'll have time to chat and connect with one another, and then the second half will be alternative growing systems. So I'll introduce that when we get to that point. Thank you. Go for it.
There?
Yep. I think it's safer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everyone doing tonight? Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I'm pleased to be here. I came down, I moved to New Hampshire about 2 years ago. So I started traveling last night and came down, but I spent several years farming in this area and running a farm near Harper's Ferry. And my wife farmed here for 15 years prior for us moving to Pennsylvania and then up to New Hampshire. So it's good to be back here, and some of you I've met before and familiar faces from the past. So thank you so much for coming. Great weather. I'm pleased you all came to see me, and I've just left 3 weeks of rain, so this is wonderful. How many of you are currently farming? All right. How about urban farmers? Almost everyone. Well, like Maya said, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story tonight, and basically a lot of it's based on spin farming, although it's sort of a system we've adapted to meet our needs. And really it's a story of going from 30 acres of production down to less than an acre, and how we've managed that system to basically realize we're making the same amount, if not more money, on less than an acre than we were on 30 acres. So I want to share that with you tonight and sort of explain in general sort of some of the concepts we've implemented. And then for anyone who's here tomorrow for the class, we're going to sort of dive into it a little bit more intensely and understand some of the production aspects. So feel free to ask questions as well, and we'll get started. So I do wear several hats, and I do have a full-time off-farm job, and that is with a nonprofit organization called the National Center for Appropriate Technology, NCAT for short. And basically we started in the early 1970s during the oil crisis to help people, particularly economically disadvantaged people, find small-scale, local, and sustainable solutions to energy and agriculture. And we have 6 offices located throughout the country now. We work on about 100 projects at any given time, basically looking at energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable and organic agriculture. And Chris is here with me from NCAT. Chris has experience as a market farmer as well as a solar livestock installer, and well, solar, all sorts of solar.
Yeah.
If you have any questions too, we brought a couple publications with us that are over here. Help yourself. You can also sign up for our newsletter. You can go to the next slide. But most people know NCAT through what I would say is our bread and butter project called ATRA. Anyone here familiar with ATRA? A couple of you. Well, ATRA was started in 1987 to provide free technical support to farmers on sustainable agriculture and organic practices. And up until last year, we were able to provide free technical assistance through several measures. One is we have a 1-800 number you can call, and if you have any questions, there's 20 of us that work on the project, and we each have a special background. So if you have a question regarding pests, soils, marketing, organic certification, you can give us a call and we'll get you in touch with the right specialist and do our best to help you address your issues. Sort of like an alternative extension agency. Our website is chock full of information, including databases for organic seed suppliers, fertilizer suppliers, livestock, apprenticeships. We're the #1 database for farm apprenticeships, so if you have a farm and are looking for some help, you can list your farm. If not, if you're looking to work on some farms, you can go around the database and see what works for you. And just all sorts of great information on there. We're close to about 400 publications now. We're constantly updating older ones, writing new ones. Chris and I are working on one now called for regional food hubs, which is a hot topic. We've got a whole bunch of ones coming out. And we do a lot of training, workshops, conferences. Except for up to last year, though. We lost our funding last year, which was quite a shock. So we shut down, or I should say went on hiatus for about a year. And as a result now, just to sort of ramp back up, we've been refunded. We're in the Farm Bill, which is actually being voted on this week. But as a result, we've had to charge for about half of our publications. So you may see there's a price related. Some of them, some you can download for free, but if you want a print copy, we have to charge you. Basically, it just covers the printing and shipping costs. So just understand that for 20-some years we were a free service. Now we're just trying to stay alive, and we do have to charge for some of our publications. All right. And I do just want to mention the USDA Risk Management Agency. They're partially paying for my trip down here today. I'm working on some projects throughout the country to help farmers manage risks. Particularly, I'm looking at specialty crop growers and small-scale growers. So I'm helping farmers look at the financial aspects, the marketing, and a little bit of crop insurance. Which is sort of a shocker because most of us don't really relate small-scale and sustainable agriculture to crop insurance. We have this theory and understand that it goes to the large-scale commodity growers, which is true. I will say that now is a great time to contact your senators in terms of the Farm Bill because there are provisions in there to help small-scale, sustainable, and organic farmers, basically to make it a fair game, to give them access to crop insurance because all of us are dealing with hurricanes and unexpected prices in the market and all sorts of issues that it shouldn't just, all our tax dollars shouldn't just go to large-scale conventional growers. So the Farm Bill is being voted on this week, and just to give my plug on the Farm Bill, there's some really great programs, a lot more money going to local foods and SNAP and low-income food programs, which is wonderful. I think it's important to point out there that that money has to come from somewhere. And looking at the Farm Bill, the latest draft yesterday, a lot of that money is coming from conservation programs. So on one hand, we're increasing local foods and food security, but on the other hand, that money is coming from conservation programs, especially from NRCS. And they haven't touched large-scale subsidies at all. So I think, if you have a chance to contact senators, now's the time. This is the week. That's my plug. So if I put my different hat on, I do work full-time for NCAT and travel around the country helping small-scale sustainable farmers, but I also farm full-time. And as I mentioned, the story today is basically how I went from 30 acres near Harper's Ferry up to Pennsylvania. We managed a 200-acre organic farm, all the way down to less than an acre. When we moved back to Pennsylvania, I started working for NCAT. And basically, in 2007, I decided to take a position with NCAT, and I knew that moving into the city and into an office job was something I needed to do, but also for my own stability and that of my family's, I needed to stay in commercial production somehow. And my background's in small-scale intensive systems. I've taught permaculture. I've studied under John Jeevens' biointensive method. But in terms of commercial production, I knew those systems really wouldn't work for me in my time schedule. And I came across a system that was being tried in Philadelphia called spin farming. It stands for small plot intensive. And started working with them, and that system really allowed me to get back into commercial production. And I've adapted it now to meet our current farm goals and needs. So basically it was a backyard farming system. I was on 3 backyards in my neighborhood, and we've since altered the system. Last year we started nomadic farms up in New Hampshire, which is an offshoot of one of the first CSAs in the country, the Temple Wilton Community Farm. And we We farmed about 5 acres, but 97% of our crops were grown on less than an acre. And they were on 3 different plots that we leased, and the rest of it was basically geared to 3 crops: potatoes, which we had a contract for, dried beans, which we sold to a seed company, and squash and tomatoes. Everything else, all our greens, everything was grown on less than an acre. And we had about a 40-member CSA. We sold to 3 restaurants, a natural food store, and our sort of saving grace was we leased land from a boarding school, which was our #1 account, which was wonderful in terms of managing our risk because it wasn't just lunch we were providing, it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it was just wonderful, and in addition to being a boarding school, they actually had more people there in the summer for teacher training than they did students during the school year. So for us, it really worked out. Unfortunately, as you can see in this picture here, the hurricane hit 30 miles west of us, Hurricane Irene. I was actually in Ohio teaching and got the call that it was hitting tomorrow, so we called some of our members to come help, and the day before the hurricane hit, we pulled 500 tomato plants out and plastic off of 4 high tunnels. And that really affected us, not in terms of what we lost that year, but we were supposed to go into winter markets, and we just couldn't get the plastic on our high tunnels, so the winter was shot. This picture is actually 3 weeks after the hurricane. The good news is we were east of the eye of the hurricane, and so we didn't really sustain the damage as much as Vermont did. I don't know if you all saw pictures of Vermont or heard stories there, but 4 feet of topsoil was just completely washed out. So yeah, we were very fortunate. So like I said, we did 2 plots at the school and then 2 around town as well. And we have 4 high tunnels. We have an apiary. This is sort of looking at when we first broke ground on the bottom plot. So there's 2 of the high tunnels. And yeah, it's nomadic farms. So before I get into sort of the system component production, I sort of want to sort of paint the picture of what I'm talking about in terms of what's going on in this country and what you all are here for and sort of my relationship to it. And so I'm looking at some of these definitions and statistics. First is a small farm. And what's neat about this term is there actually really isn't a definition of a small farm in terms of scale. So you could be on 10 acres, you could be on 100 acres, I could be on less than an acre, and we can all call ourselves a small-scale farmer. From the last census in 2007, there'll be another one this year, is that 91% of all farms in 2007, 91% consider themselves a small farm. That means 9% consider themselves above the $250,000 mark. And of those, only 56% were accounted for our U.S. food production. So the difference was made up by that 9%. So when you hear about the industrial food system and just a few farms making our food system, those are the statistics that support that. But of those small farms, 91% of them, 60% have less than $10,000 in sales. So that means they're either hobby farmers, I would say a few of them are full-time farmers who just had a bad season or aren't quite making it. USDA actually expects you to lose money so many years on your tax returns. 60%, that's a huge number in terms of commercial production. And what I want to focus on tonight is within all of this urban agriculture and small-scale farming is we're really talking about the commercial side of things, of making a living at it. This isn't a community garden. This is, you're trying to make a living. Over half of the farms are direct sales. I think that's really important to point out. At this scale, it's very difficult to do well in the wholesale market. In terms of quantity and price, the direct sales are really what's going to make you achieve your goals. And as we all know, the average age is 57.1 years old. We all see that now with the older farmers trying to transition down. Their kids don't want the farm, but there's a whole new generation of beginning farmers. And I don't want to just say young farmers, because a lot of them are on their 3rd or 4th career change. They've been on Wall Street, but they're all trying to access this market. And it's sort of an interesting puzzle right now. How do you get access to land, and how do you start farming with your resources? So we'll talk about that a little bit here. I do want to point out, I really like this picture. I got to give a presentation with Elliot Coleman a few months ago in Ohio, and that's just right from his book, The Winter Harvest Handbook. But it tells a really neat story from the mid-1800s in Paris. on how they supported the whole city on urban farms. And at one point they were supporting most of France on just these urban farms around Paris. Then they started going into England, and then also Russia. And at one point Russia and England said, well, if the French can do this, we can do this. And they failed. So they had to develop a whole new system. And a lot of you may have heard of the French intensive system, or the biointensive system from John Jevons, which is biodynamic and French intensive combined. That's basically what this is the foundation is horse manure. And then for season extension, they would create these glass bells that would cover every single plant. And then the bell would have a notch on the top where you could put a stick through and lift up a whole bunch at one time for ventilation during the daytime. And if you need a little extra protection, you could roll out these straw mats at night, cover them up. And they were able to supply the entire city of Paris based on these urban farms. So these statistics here, you can find them in numerous places. This just happens to be from the National Young Farmers Coalition. But I think they're really important to point out too in terms of what I want to talk about today. First is this term beginning farmer. It's very interesting that the USDA actually considers 10 years or less a beginning farmer. I don't think I'm ever done, I'm always learning as a farmer. But that's what they consider. So 78% of farmers rank lack of capital as a top challenge, with another 40% ranking access to credit. I think that's very important to point out. Also 68% of farmers rank land access as the biggest challenge. And I'm going to show you here next in terms of accessing these barriers why these statistics are important. 70% of farmers under 30 rented land, which is very important to the system that I've used in knowing I'm on several different plots. I can't buy them all. So how do I manage my risk knowing I'm leasing all this different land? And 49% ranked CSAs as a top program. Pretty interesting. So in terms of removing the barriers, the two biggest barriers into entry into agriculture, and according to these statistics too, are the high cost of land and access to infrastructure and capital costs. So the system that we've been working with removes these barriers. And I think that's really important, especially when we went from 30 acres of using tractors and equipment all the way down to backyard system and realized our gross is actually even higher. It's a way to manage risks. And in terms of some of the markets today, a backyard urban farmer may not be meeting the demand for a lot of institutions, but it's providing a living and you're able to really create a local food system. And so this chart, I doubt you can read it, but it was developed by NCAT and the Michael Fields Institute about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And I think it's pretty accurate, but basically what it does is it divides up your needs in terms of equipment and investments by scale. So this first category here across is 1 to 3 acres. Then this row is 4 to 6, 7 to 10 acres, and I think this is 20 plus. Yeah. And it goes through, your delivery vehicles, post-harvest handling, harvesting, cultivation, production equipment, seed starting, etc. And what's interesting is less than an acre is not on there. I would think it's pretty close to 1 to 3 acres, although I would change some things. But basically, as you scale up, you have much more investments, which means you've got to produce more. And so how does that affect your markets and your risks? And so that's what I want to share with you today. Does anyone know where this is? It's actually Kansas City. But it could be here. You see it everywhere. There's land out there. Everyone, neighbors are mowing their lawns, investing money, fossil fuels, spraying their dandelions. We're just talking about that. There's plenty of land to farm. And to be able to not only feed your family, but to feed your neighbors, there's huge potential. And again, but we want to focus on commercial production, making money at it. All right. So in terms of risks, I'm going to talk just briefly about some of the risks, but this is straight out of Joel Salatin, the lunatic farmer over in Sweet, Virginia. Basically, and I think he's exactly right on these. Starting with low initial startup costs, we don't need much investment to come in. A lot of people think to start a farm, you've got to have tractors, you've got to have infrastructure to house the tractors, you've got to have storage, and all these major investments that really put you just in debt the whole time. High gross profit margin, low maintenance requirements, high cash flow relative to expenses. And I should say, in terms of that, we're working now with a lot of holistic management, and the traditional model is income minus expenses equals profit. It's the traditional model with agriculture, pretty much any business. Holistic management looks at it in terms of goal setting, bringing sort of all the decision makers to the table, and really designing a map for you to reach your potential. And you've got a goal in mind, how do you get there? And you need that map. And so what they're looking at is income minus profit equals expenses. And I think that's really important, because if you can lower your expenses, that changes your whole system. And if not, then you really need to increase your income. You're not paying yourself enough. So high demand, low supply in the marketplace. We'll talk about that tonight. And high product distinctiveness. We dropped out of selling at farmers markets for several reasons, but now we're known for our salad mix, our greens, and our carrots. And it's enough that we're saying we should probably go back into farmers markets. But having a brand, having a distinct item, and what your farm's known for is really important. Breezy Hill Farm, they're known for their signature salad mix. Who else? L.A. Coleman, he's got his stir-fry mix and salsa mix that he sells at market. It's just being known for something, and that's what people come to buy. All right. And I just want to point this out in terms, too, of risk management. The risk management website for the USDA has all sorts of great information in terms of business plans, financial management, marketing, lots of great information. But really what we're talking about is our risks involving production, our risks involving financial components, marketing, the human risks, which are a huge component in terms of your family, your employees, and also the legal risks. So sort of all those are really what we need to look at, and it's really hard for a beginning farmer to capture this. You're so involved with production and making sure you meet your season goals. I can't stress enough how important it is to have a business plan. Right off the bat, you've got to have that roadmap to meet your goals, and these are everything that need to be addressed in it. So the really great thing is that in terms of managing risks, I think urban agriculture provides a lot of opportunities unexpectedly, that you really don't have to go out of your way to take advantage of them. And so these are just a few that I found that really worked for our farm, going from a rural area, 200 acres, all the way down to being right in the city on multiple plots. And so the first one is water. Water in terms of quality and quantity are much different in an urban setting. In terms of quality, it's usually public water. We assume it's safe. It's tested. We're not digging wells. We're not putting in pumps and motors. It's really going up to a spigot, turning it on, turning it off. Sometimes you have to monitor that water use, but we're not putting in complex systems that we generally have to do in a rural system. Quantity is usually not an issue unless you're in a drought season and there's restrictions, but normally you're not really concerned in terms of quantity. Climate is a huge component. Urban areas tend to be 4 to 6 degrees warmer than rural areas, and right there's a season extension component. Wildlife, generally speaking, we're not talking about groundhogs and deer, although I did have an 8-foot deer fence in my city plot. My neighbors just loved it. But it's human traffic, it's dogs and cats. So it's a whole different fencing system, it's a whole different strategy of what you're trying to keep out. Proximity to markets is huge. Chris was just telling me he used to sell in Philadelphia, which was a 2.5-hour trip. I used to sell in the DC markets, which was over an hour. That's a lot of time off farm, or I could be doing something else. So being in an urban location and having more markets available really cuts down on a lot of your costs. It gives you a lot more opportunity to sell. There was one market, and I only did this once, but we sold out of several crops. I was able to go home, harvest, wash, get back to market, and continue selling. We had good beer that. And multi-locational. Just having this opportunity to farm several different plots to really meet the amount of space you need to grow what you want to grow.